Alright, we are about to have some fun. We had some issues with this. That is a 4-circuit protection valve, and it has a lot of things going into it. And when we were up in the cold weather, I'm almost 100% sure that was one of our main leaks in the system. It was leaking like crazy. So I looked into getting a rebuild kit for that, just like we did with the foot brake valve, and I could not find one. I mean, I didn't look really hard. Expedition Imports didn't have it, so I had them order a complete new valve. And this is not a Bosch. I don't know what the difference is. I don't even know how to pronounce that. I'm not even going to try, so I don't sound like an idiot. But this looks like the same valve. Looks like it goes this way. We're going to attempt to put that in there and see what happens. So just want to clarify this if you're new to the channel. Here at Mogs and Dogs, my whole point to this channel was to put up videos of a normal person that doesn't know what they're doing, trying to figure out their way through this. So I am not a mechanic. I have never done this before, and I'm just going to show my experience with this, and hopefully we can learn something together, and maybe this will show something useful that will help you do this in the future. Now obviously, if you are a mechanic, a Unimog specialist, whatever, this isn't for you. You already know, I'm sure. So yeah, for all you other morons like me, this might be your video. So the first thing we're gonna do is drain the tanks. Those are already empty. I drained them yesterday, so we have zero pressure in the system. Obviously we don't want air pressure in here when we start undoing things. That could be a problem. The second thing we're going to do is look through the book, see if there's anything we should know, anything we shouldn't do. This is a diagram of our truck, 43.11, my truck, which is a 435.117, and this also covers, I believe, the 435.115. Alright, so I've looked through this whole section and I see nothing that actually talks about replacing parts, just a lot of diagrams. But other than that, I don't see anything in here on how to take it apart or anything to, watch for or whatnot. So I think what I'm going to do is just mark all of the hoses and where they go, document everything with photos, and then just start taking it apart. This has only one orientation. There's two hoses coming in here, only one hose coming out over here, so that can only go one way. Obviously this is going to be facing us, and then you have the two top, the two bottom, and most of these are hard lines. So this is a hard line, this is a hard line, this is a hard line, so all three of those are going to stay in the place where when I unhook them. They're not going to move because they're hard. This one is soft, but that's the only one, and it goes in right there. The only place it could go. And then the only two that could be potentially mixed up, which would be doubtful, but just in case, I marked this one as top and this one as bottom, so we know. But I'm sure when I undo these are probably going to stay in place for the most part also, even though they're not hard lines. Alright, 22 millimeter, almost all of these. So banjo fittings have two crush washers, one on each side. I don't want to twist these. Last thing I want to do is break a hard line. I actually have two 22s. I think I bought this one a while ago because it had the my only ratcheting box wrench. Okay. Okay. All right. So the aluminum part of these fittings is kind of crushed up in there. So just kind of break those loose. See if this works. Yep. Oh, there we go. That one broke free. Okay. There we go. That one broke free. Sweet. Now we probably have room to undo that other one. I am lucky, everything unscrews very easily. I've yet to have a tight bolt in this truck. Well, I had the one that was broken off on the front bumper, but that was it. Just one broken bolt, which actually extracted pretty easily as well, so I don't have any nuts or bolts that are rusted on. I've seen a lot of other people deal with. So that's nice. Probably one of the benefits of getting a fire truck. Now this one looks bigger. Yep, that's not a 22. Let's try 24. Yep. So that's 27 millimeter, 24 millimeter, and 22 millimeter. At this point, let's hold the 27 and see if we can break free this 22. Oh man. There we go. Oh, nice. So that came off. Now we need to bring this nut off. I'd prefer not to undo any connections that I don't need to, because I'm just potentially creating another spot where I could have a leak. There we go. Work smarter, not harder. So there's the valve. It is out. Alright, this turned into a little bit bigger project than I had originally thought. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, where are we at this moment? We have the new valve. It comes with no fittings in it attached to it. So, that's where the fun began. What do I need to replace? Do I need to replace anything? And where do I get these parts? If they didn't come on here and Expedition Imports doesn't stock them, what do we do? So I did a forum post on this in Ben's World. You can check that out. I've also created a page on my website which has even more information on it. So I'll put that link down below. You can definitely go check that out. And I have a bunch of this in text, and I have pictures with measurements and stuff on the pictures, so that's very helpful. But let me see if I can kind of talk you through what I'm doing, what I found out, and what I'm thinking. So first things first, let's go over to this side, because this is the easy one. So these are banjo fittings. These are a certain size. I think they're M16. And that's pretty straightforward. Very simple. I could find these if I wanted online and probably at my local shop if I needed. I don't see any reason to replace these. They look like they're in very good shape. Now what I do need to replace are these, and I have this beautiful kit from Bellmetric. These are just 16 by 20. That's the size. So I just need 4 of those. So that's done. That's easy. So this side of the equation, we're done. We're just going to reuse these. We have the banjo fittings, which are on the truck, and I'll show you in a minute. And I have new crush washer. That's straightforward. Those are easy to find, easy to get. Obviously Bellmetric has them, but I'm sure you can find them in other places. Now we move over here. This stuff gets a little bit harder. This, let's just go to this one because there's only one. This is called a bulkhead fitting, and the reason that's called a bulkhead fitting is, I believe, because you have 2 nuts here that compress together on that piece of metal that this goes through. So this is longer than normal. And on all of these fittings, let's just start with this one, you have multiple measurements. So this thread here is, I believe, M18 by 1.5. That's metric. And then over here it's M22 by 1.5. I don't think the length matters that much on either of these, although on my website I do have that listed. The other really important side, this side doesn't matter because it goes into this fitting. It's not mating up with anything here, it's just screwing in. But this side is very important because there's a compression fitting with a little conical, I think they call it a cutting washer or cutting sleeve or something. It's made out of aluminum, and that jams in there, and then you tighten down the nut and it kind of presses it into there, it compresses it into there, compression fitting. So that is a size and I had the hardest time figuring out what that is. There's a whole standard of sizes called DIN, D-I-N, which is a German standard. There are other standards, and like there's a British standard, I think, and I'm sure there's US versions. So anyway, which DIN that is, I don't know. I still don't know. If you know, please let me know. That would be wonderful to be able to add to all the diagrams. Now my local place did not have this, but they could order it, and I asked him what size this was, and he said 12 millimeter, which doesn't sound like even the type of measurement it would have. So yeah, I'm still confused on that one, but that measurement's important. This measurement, this outside measurement, is important with the threads, and then this one. And then let me take this off here. There is a washer here. It's very tight, which seals this when it's tightened in there. Okay, this is called a bonded washer, so it's not just a metal piece. It's got a washer with this recess in it, and then this O-ring goes in there. Now I think originally this O-ring probably pressed in there pretty tight, but these, I'm guessing these are 40 years old, so they're pretty old, and they're not the same size they used to be. These are pretty straightforward. This is an M22 bonded washer, and you can find these online, not that hard. And I was also actually able to find them locally. So what they ended up giving me was this. Now this is different than the one that's on there, because this is a flat piece with a ridge cut in it, and then the washer goes on top of it, kind of fits in that groove. This looks like the rubber goes on both sides evenly, so it's like they're pressed together. It's not just one-sided like this one. So I'm hoping that works. It's still very tight on there. It's still considered an M22 bonded washer. I'm just guessing, I don't know this for fact, that maybe this is just the newer way of doing things and this is the older way. But I'm going to put it all together and we'll see. They could order these. I can reuse these, I'm pretty sure. There's no reason why I couldn't. They're not destroyed. The only thing I worry about is this being worn out and not fitting well, but I don't think that was leaking before. So I am going to just clean these up and reuse them and see if they work fine. Now these are exactly the same thing, except they're not bulkhead. They don't have the longer side with two nuts that compress it in. They just screw in and then you attach your hose to it. So that's a little more straightforward, but pretty much the same thing. There's still two different measurements. This is M16 on this side and M18 on this side, I believe. Yep, so these are the diagrams that are on my site. So M18 right there by 1.5, M16 by 1.5. I still don't know what the compression side is on this. Again, he said 12 millimeters. I don't know about that. Not sure exactly what that means. But this has the same washers on it. And you can see on these, all of these, you can see how when you get close, you can barely see any of the rubber O-ring. It does not fill out that recess in the washer. It's kind of jammed into the threads, and it's definitely been compressed a lot and shrunk, I guess, and it's just not the same size. So it's possible that my leak could have been through one of these. I think that's very possible. So this is just an M16 bonded washer. See, it's the same setup as the big one over here, and they gave me at my shop the same newer type, or the same different type, whatever that actually is, for that. So it fits snugly. Again, it's a very snug fit, which is great. They are a little bit wider outer diameter, so I don't think that should matter. Actually, I don't know why that would matter at all, but we'll see. So that's what we're putting on there. So again, M16 bonded washer, and I was able to find those locally. So I got 4 of them for this, and then a couple extras for my backup kit for spares, and then I got a bunch of extras on the big ones as well. So that means all of my washers are taken care of. So the only thing I didn't, or the main thing I haven't done here, is just replace these fittings themselves. So I'm going to reuse those, clean them up, put everything back together. I'm going to clean up the opposite ends, which I'll show you right now. So you can see here, that's called a cutting ring, and that's kind of pressed on there. And then you've got the nut here that pulls it all together. So that goes in that, what I was saying was the DIN side of each one of those fittings, and then they get pulled in there. The local place that I have, they said they can make these hoses for me, and they can actually switch to a different type of fitting, maybe something that's more USA friendly, not as rare over here, or maybe a newer standard. And don't ask me what that is. Some people on the forums have switched these completely to like a push to lock system. I don't know if that works with hard lines. I don't think it does. But if you wanted to switch to maybe flexible tubing like this, or on the ones that are flexible, like this one's a flexible tube, you could do that, do push to lock on that. The reason I didn't do that was because the push-to-lock fittings, because they're different, they would be a different size than this, and these tubes are cut exactly to the size they need to be, and you can't, you might be able to move them around a little bit, but I'd be afraid of breaking them or, you know, creasing them or putting a hole in one of them. So I wouldn't want to mess with anything that would change the size of this. So it's just getting in. And then if you wanted to redo these lines completely, that's doable. They're not that big. But then my question would be, where do you end? So if I redo this fitting on this side, and then I take this and I do a new hose, I'm not going to want to, oh, I can't reuse this, so now I got to replace this one, and then I guess that would screw in there. But then I'm you know, this is just going to turn into, I'm replacing every single thing in this system, which is going to be very expensive. And yeah, it just seems like it's adding a lot of trouble for no reason. This system's been working for 40 years. Everything's fine. I don't have any leaks except for the big one that I'm repairing now. And if that's not actually where the leak was, then I can find that leak and do it. But I don't want to take everything apart and reintroduce the possibility of new leaks. So anyway, it just seems like a lot of work. And more importantly than that, just a lot of money. I can't afford to replace all of this stuff. That's just ridiculous. As I've said many times, this can't be a $500,000 truck by the end of this process. Yeah, one of the things that I keep in mind when I'm doing this kind of stuff is that I keep hearing from people, lots of overland people, specifically like Scott Brady, and they talk about they going into these other countries and then not being able to get insurance for their rigs, or if they do, it's not very good insurance. So we need to be able to take the loss of this entire vehicle. That's a possibility. So, you know, if I dump my entire life savings and time into this thing, and then we go down to Mexico or Venezuela or wherever, and something happens and this truck is done, we get into an accident, we roll it, somebody steals it, who knows? I don't want that to completely ruin our lives. So I really want to try to hold back and not turn this into a complete restoration. I want it to be reliable. There's definitely a balance there. I don't know what it is exactly. I'm kind of figuring it out on the fly, and I definitely have gone overboard on some things and maybe not done enough on others, but you know, I'm trying to figure that out. All right, we have wire wheeled all of these, cleaned them up. I didn't touch these. I'll just degrease these when I clean up everything. And now I need to decide, some of these are a little rusty in the inside and actually quite chewed up. I don't know if that's pitting from rust, but I mean, it's an air valve, so I don't think that's going to impede the air from going through there. I do need to find a way to stick something in there and get all the gunk out. But I guess the question I need to decide, do I want to replace that because it's all jimmied up? Like this one's smooth, like nice, beautiful. I guess there was no moisture going through that one. This one has light corrosion on the inside, not as bad as the other. And then this one, same thing, some light corrosion, a little bit of pitting there. And then, oh sorry, the big one here. This one actually is not corroded at all, really. It's pretty clean. Alright, let's try a 9mm bore snake. Oh yeah. Perfect. You want to clean out your air system fittings. 9mm bore snake. Perfect. Alright, we got my favorite type of box today in the mail. Something from Expedition Imports. And we finally have our pieces for the valve from Germany. So that's going to replace this. Here are the two nuts that go with that. That will replace these. And then we got 4 of these, which will be an exact replacement for these. So we are ready to put this thing back together. So we're going to use this Super Lube O-ring specific silicone grease. That is so we don't destroy anything in the air system as far as rubber goes. I'm going to put this on all the threads before we thread it back together. Somebody's going to ask me, they're going to say, what are the torque specs on these? And I'm going to say, you know, that's a great question. I would assume there probably are torque specs for this. This is an air thing. That's a pretty important piece. You don't want to strip it out or over tighten it or under tighten it. It needs to be airtight. I think this is aluminum. Yeah, it's not steel. I think this is aluminum. So you got steel going into aluminum. It's another issue. So you're going to think, yeah, that's probably pretty important to have torque specs for these. But I could absolutely not find them. I spent way too much time online trying to find those. I called Expedition Imports. They had no idea where I could even find that info. We could probably contact them directly, but it is a massive company. So yeah, if anybody has a manual for this or specs for this, I looked in our big Unimog manuals, shop manuals, definitely wasn't in there. So I am just going to tighten them down till I feel comfortable, and we're just going to roll with it there. If it leaks, then we'll tighten them down more. If not, then we're good. Okay, that's it. Let's fire this thing up, see what happens. Okay. All right. There we go. There we go. It's been sitting for a long time. We're going to get up to full pressure and then I'll shut it off and see what it looks like. I'll come back in a minute. We're back. We're at full pressure. Let's turn it off, see what she looks like. Alright, no leaks that I can hear, so we're going to set a timer, see how long it takes for this thing to drop in air pressure. Make sure it hasn't already. No, still at 100%. So I'll let you know where this goes. Alright, it has been a few hours and we have definitely dropped a little bit. So, not a crazy amount. I think the next thing we'll look at is just how far it drops overnight. So I'll check in tomorrow. Soap up all of these. Any bubbles? I don't see anything obvious. Let's check them all while we're at it. Nope, nothing that I can see. I still have really good pressure, so something should be coming out, if anything. Alright, it is the next day, and this has dropped down to 5.5, 6 bar. So that's pretty normal for this truck. So replacing that 4-way valve did not fix all of my leaking issues. So it still leaks a little bit. So yeah. Let's take this apart. See what's going on in there. Maybe we can put some new O-rings in there or something. Or maybe we just lube it up, clean it, put it back together. Alright, I completely lost some footage of me taking this apart, so I have put this back together now, and that gives me a little bit of insight as to what's going on here. There are 4 springs in here that seem quite powerful, so you most definitely don't want to just unscrew these 4 bolts and let this thing fly apart. So I think the best way to do this is to grab a clamp, clamp it down to the bench. We're going to undo these. Pull these 4 bolts off. I would take this very slowly. The force, it seems too powerful for me to push it with my hands. Like I can't squeeze it together. So you're definitely going to need some kind of tool. And then we're just going to slowly release the pressure here. Alright. And I did it with the bench, and I've also done it just this piece with the clamp. So if your clamp isn't big enough, you could just clamp this. I also tried it with these. These didn't work too well. I mean, they're not made for that, so I think the reason those don't work too well is that square pad doesn't fit in here well, whereas this round fits perfectly in there. So set that aside, and then we're going to pull this off, and you can see this is a very simple cap. There seems to be these 4 points screwed in there. I'm not quite sure how they got those in there. Oh, there's little flathead screws in there. I don't see a reason to take those off. There's nothing I can do to those to make that better or different. So I'm just going to clean them, and then we'll set that cap aside. Next, you have these little, I don't know if they're brass or not. They look brass, but they could just be some coated steel or something like that. I don't think they're brass. But anyway, those little top hats go in upside down into the springs. I mean, yeah, that's a little top hat, right? There's 4 of those. And then we have these springs, which are all the same. Everything's a little gooey in there, but for the most part, it is empty. Or I shouldn't say for the most part, it is empty. There's nothing else in there that I can tell. We've got these, this looks like hard plastic. And then there's definitely a gasket here. I'm not going to try to pull that up because I don't want to destroy it, because I don't know if I will be able to get a replacement for that. I probably won't be able to. So I'd rather have it there than not, even if it's used. This is an air fitting, so I would think we would definitely want to replace that, but we'll see if I can get a hold of that. So there's definitely some goo in there. I'm cleaning that out. I don't know if it's supposed to be gooed. By goo, I mean maybe oil. So I'm going to flip that over now. I don't know what else to do to this other than flip it over and attempt to look at this. We'll use an abundance of caution here. I don't really feel like dealing with exploding parts or... So I just tighten that down a little bit, and that actually probably gave me a little bit of space there to work with. Let's see if we can take this ring off. There we go. That is just a, I don't know what you call this, C-clip. And then let's slowly release this, and there doesn't seem to be any pressure at all. Set that aside again. Okay. And then, oh, we have a cap here. I'm going to do this in order. And we seem to have an O-ring here. It's a weird place for an O-ring, or seemingly. We have another larger O-ring around the outside here. And then we'll reuse these. Let's pull that out. Okay, these little ridges go down. That's for my own memory. Little ridges go down, and then underneath of that there are two little suction cups. Oh, that's interesting. Or little plungers, I don't know what you want to call those. One on each side. Wow. And that is it. That is that whole thing. Huh. Maybe that's not it. I'm wondering if maybe these will come off if I take this off. We're going to try to avoid scratching things. So we are going to use these. I like a nice fat wide one. This one's a little jacked up, but alright, we have an in over here. Oh. Oh yeah, there's more O-rings under there. Okay, well that's good. I don't think that one's going to cut it. That's not going to work. It's too fat. Ooh, I like that. Okay. Let's try that. Guess that makes sense. The hardest fought points seem to be where the screws were. That's going to be the tightest area, of course. I like that edge. That's handy. Okay. Gasket has been removed. Definitely destroyed. So we won't be able to reuse that. That's an O-ring. Plastic insert. Oh. Let's take those out. And looks like I think that's finally this plastic rubber, maybe. Looks like maybe steel coated with rubber. I don't know what that is. Huh. And there's 4 of those. Ooh. So for some reason there's a lot of gunk in this one. And this one has some. And these two are pretty clean. But that is it. I do not see anything else in there of note. So I am going to clean all of this and see if I can get new O-rings and see if I can obtain a gasket, and then I'll be back. Alright, welcome back. It has actually been a few weeks. So I actually found a company online that makes a kit for this valve. It's an Italian company called Megori. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the kit number is 330150, and it is for this specific valve. So pretty cool. It took me a long time, but I finally was able to find this. And they don't typically, or they don't ever sell to just normal people like myself, but they were nice enough to make an exception and wire transferred some money, and they sent this over. So thank you, Megori. Don't know if that'll help anybody else. I don't know if they'll be able to actually order this, but they must have distributors. I couldn't get that info from them. It wasn't on their website, and I asked them and they didn't give it to me, but they said they'd send me this, so I was like, that's good enough. I didn't really press it. So they must have distributors somewhere, I'm guessing in Europe. So if you're in Europe, you should probably be able to find this somewhere. I just don't know where, but it does exist. So that's pretty cool, and it looks like it has everything, which is amazing. So let's open this thing up, lube this stuff up, and put this thing back together. First thing I'm going to do before we start putting things back together is I am going to get the gunk off of this. It's from this gasket here, and they did actually put a new gasket in this kit, so that's great. I was afraid I might have to use RTV or something, and then I'll also have to clean the head of this. There's definitely some paper on there, so I'm going to do that. Alright, let's put this thing back together. So before we start this, I want to say something. I am not an expert at this, and I've never done this before, so you are seeing this live as I do it. Do not take this as expert advice at all. I am just bringing you with me, so maybe you can learn something from what I do, but by no means is this to be taken as any kind of advice or how to do this. There are a number of things that I don't know about this because I couldn't find any documentation on this valve. So things like torque specs, I have no idea. Which side up this gasket goes, I don't know. How much I should be lubing certain things, I don't know. Specifically what lube I should be using, I don't know. I'm going to use this O-ring silicone grease because O-rings, and I'm going to lube up everything, but I don't know if that's correct. Everything that I pulled out was fairly lubed up, so I'm just going to have to take that and hope that that works well. I don't have any way of testing this once I'm done because I've already put the new one in the truck. I'm not going to pull that off and then put this one back on. So I'm kind of doing this for YouTube, for you guys, and kind of so I have a backup. And yeah, if that one on the truck ever goes down, then I guess I have this one, and then I can put it on there and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then I can pull it apart and see, maybe I can figure out why. But it would not be until that time that I would actually know if what I'm doing is successful or not. So anyway, take everything I'm doing here with a grain of salt. I'm just gonna put it back together and put it on a shelf and put it in my spare parts kit, and that'll be the end of it. So let's do this. I'm gonna start with the bottom side here. So that's the bottom. I had to go back through and actually reference the videos I took of me taking it apart, because it's been a while. So I'm going to lube that up. I'm going to lube these up. And these are going to go on these two circles here. Okay. I do remember that these little ridges here, you can see, those go down. And then the way this thing is shaped, it can only go in one direction. So anywhere I think two surfaces are touching, I'm going to lube. So that's going to be around the edge of this thing, I know that. And then in these circles, that's where the rubber things are going to go. So we're going to just lube all this up. Again, I don't know if that's correct or not, but I imagine it. Hopefully it'll be okay. But who knows? This may never ever be used again anyway. Hopefully the new one lasts forever, or until I die, or until I sell the truck, or whatever. But maybe... So... Try to get this. Two black pieces going right there, the little suction cups. This ridges down. It's going to go in here like this. The two tops of the suction cups go inside. A little hole on that. Another O-ring. Not another O-ring, the first O-ring we're putting in. That's going to go in here like so. On the edge. This little O-ring. Let's lube that up. I'm just going to put a thin layer of lube all the way around here. This is going to go, there's a little raised circle here. This O-ring goes over that, and you can think this O-ring is closest to this opening here. There's no input on this side, there is input on this side, so the O-ring goes on the input side. This cap, the I don't know what you want to say, the pressed in side, this side goes down, so that's the outside. It makes sense because this side's clean, would have been in the inside. We're gonna put a thin layer of grease on that all the way around. And then we're gonna set that in there like so. Lock ring. I'm going to guess this dirty side is up, although I'm also going to guess that it does not matter because it looks pretty uniform. Okay. Just going to make sure that that seats completely in there. Okay, yeah. Alright. There we go. So you can actually see around the edge, because I didn't clean this that well on the outside, which I don't really care about because it's on the outside, there was a ring of dirt, and if this wasn't fully seated in the groove, you would see a clean line around the edge there, which we do not. So that bottom part is complete. Let's flip her over. This is the original one, And there's definitely remnants of grease inside of there, so I'll definitely lube inside of there. But on the back side, there's no indication that there was ever any grease. Well, maybe a little bit. Okay. I'm going to put a really thin layer of grease on the back side of that. Not much. Do around the edges. And we're definitely going to do some grease on the inside. And these just get dropped in like so. Alright. These go next. They're going to go right in behind that. Just going to lube these up completely. There's one. Alright, those are done. Next up, O-rings. Around the outside edge here. All 4 O-rings in place. Next up, just going to do the ends of these springs. One goes in each hole. Next up, we have these little caps. I'll lube those up. They're going to go inside the spring. Once again, I don't know which direction this goes. I'm going to go with the words up. Don't know if that's correct or not. And then we're going to put this on. And I need to figure out which direction that goes. So, got the input here on this side, nothing on this side. Well, there's 2 little ones on this side. The big one's over here. So that means the Bosch should go towards that. So that's how that attaches. So we've got to keep that gasket square so it doesn't get caught in the springs. Okay, that's one started. Okay, so that's still a little loose. It's pretty even all the way around. Okay, that's that. So I'm gonna torque these to something. Let me go figure out what that's gonna be. I cannot find a torque spec for these, so I'm just gonna go really small. I'm gonna start with 5 foot-pounds. Don't know what that is in Newton meters. I guess it's about 8 Newton meters, something like that. See how that feels. I think these are maybe M5 bolts. They're in aluminum. It's one. Click. 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 Alright, I'm stopping there. I don't know if that's correct. I didn't strip anything, so that's good. So that's it. I am done for now. So if anybody watching this knows any of the things that I don't know, like did I put the gasket on upside down or not? Do you know what the foot-pounds is for these 4 bolts? Did I do anything else incorrectly? Should I have put grease between the gasket and the 2 pieces? I did not do that, so that's a question. And that's the only other thing I can think of. So for now, this is complete. Like I said, I'm not going to put it on, but it is done. I think it's ready to rock if we ever need it. So this concludes the install of the new 4-way valve and the refurbishing kit for the old one. So we now have a spare. All right. Thanks for watching.